Hey friends, today we're going to learn about basic concepts of evolution and species. Let's start with an interesting question. Have a look at these four pictures. First, take a look at these bugs. Do these bugs look of the same species to you? I hope you said yes, because they are. They may look a little different. This one is dark, and some are light, and some are without spots, but they're essentially the same species. Now take a look at these teeny humans. Are they of the same species? Of course they are. Moving to these dogs, are these four of the same species? Well, you may be a little bit confused by now, but they look different and I don't know. You may be a little confused by now. Well, at least they look different. Let's see. Now take a look at this last picture. Of course, they're very different and they are not of the same species. So let's conclude what we learned from these pictures. First of all, what defines a species? Species is defined as those organisms which can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Note interbreed and fertile. Their offspring should also be able to interbreed with each other. The second conclusion is that we saw some intra-species variation. These bugs, they're one species but they differ. These humans are one species but they also differ. Okay, and now I'm posing a big question, which we will answer at the end of this video. Do you think these bugs, which differ a little, in the future they may form different species? Or we as humans, who differ a little, may in the future form different species? And yes, that's the big question. Are humans still evolving? Are humans still evolving? Now let's understand step by step the process of what produces these species. Evolution. Who's this guy? Well, this is Darwin. Darwin first said evolution was descent with modifications. Now you'll understand better by the end of this video. Okay, let's start. We will start with what we can see or what Darwin saw at his time, and then we will work our way up to what led to that. What Darwin observed on the Galapagos Islands was many intriguing birds. They were quite different but yet quite the same. What intrigued him were the beaks. When he observed carefully, he saw that the beaks of each bird was adapted to the type of food available in their habitat. For example, one of these lived where seeds were quite numerous and it had a thick beak that could crack open seeds. What he saw were different species which were perfectly, not very perfectly, but quite good adapted to the environment. Now this was an observation. Let us move up to the process which led to this. Take a look at these pictures. These are moths sitting on the bark of a tree. The first one is of the pre-industrialization era when lichens which were white in color grew on barks. If you were a predator, don't you think this black moth would be quite easily visible to you and hence it would be eaten? While the white one, which is almost invisible and merges with the background lichens, will remain, untouched, will survive and reproduce. Now look at the second picture, which was after industrialization, which led to soot deposited on the trunks and the trunks became black. Now exactly the opposite happened. The black moths merged into the background and the predators ate the white moths. Thus, now the black moths had a selective advantage over the white counterparts. They survived and thus reproduced. Here the force for natural selection was predators. There may be other forces as well, like climate. Take an example of a polar bear which has a thick coat of fur. I don't think we would be able to survive in Antarctica, but a polar bear can, of course. He has been selected for it. Another force could be intra-species competition for food or resources, like giraffe. Now the giraffe has a very long neck, and it wasn't so in the beginning, when it had to compete for food which was high on the trees because none was left at the lower regions. So what all these examples has shown us is the process of natural selection. This is defined as the process in which individuals who have certain genetic traits which makes them better adapted to their environment, they tend to survive and reproduce, hence increasing their proportion in the future populations. Wait a minute, but now you should ask, from where did that black moth come from in the first place? And that is when we move up another step to what led to this. Now this is where Darwin went clueless, and in came Mendel. Ha ha ha. He first introduced the concepts of heritable traits or genes. Coming back to the question of where the black moth came from, the answer is variations. The black moth was a variant, basically random variations. But wouldn't you say these don't seem much random? Like, take a look at these pictures. They don't seem random at all. They seem pretty well adapted to the environments. But what we have to understand here is all of these traits which look so perfect today, these all started as variations, random variations, which were then selected by natural selection. So the process started as something random, but ended up being such a beautiful thing. Evolution is a beauty, isn't it? Now what processes lead to random variations? The first of these is mutations. Take a look at this DNA. Like this thymine has changed to cytosine, which will then result in change of trait and a variation. The second process responsible is sexual reproduction. Well, three more processes come under sexual reproduction which lead to variations. Now, this is a man who has to produce sperms, and in the process of producing sperms in meiosis, there is independent assortment of chromosomes, which basically means that of the 23 chromosomes in a sperm, any random combination would be paternal of origin, and some would be paternal in origin, and some would be maternal in origin. That is totally random. Second is crossing over, which also occurs in meiosis, in which paternal and maternal chromosomes of one homologous pair exchange some genetic material, and that also creates variations. And third is fertilization. Now imagine a population, a large population having both males and females. If it were to be totally random, a random male mates with a random female, now that is again a random process which brings together two completely different gametes to form one zygote, leading to variations. This leads to unique combinations of traits in the offspring. The third and last process is rapid multiplication. The mutations we talked about above were simply errors in copying of DNA. So if we assume a certain error rate in copying, say 1:1000, don't you think the more we will copy, the more errors we will get? And that is exactly what we mean by rapid multiplication. More progeny means more copying, means more errors, means more variation. Now, well, obviously this does not apply to humans, because obviously they have to grow at least 20 years to even be capable of reproduction. This applies to small organisms, particularly unicellular organisms and viruses, which can produce offsprings within hours or within days. So now let us see the bigger picture. First of all, random variations happen in a population, which are then selected upon. The variations which best suit the environment are selected, and accumulation of many of these variations then leads to different species, each of which is quite good adapted to the environments. This is also called adaptive evolution. Now let us return to our big question. Are humans still evolving? The answer is yes. We, and in fact every other organism in this universe, is still evolving. In fact, these little variations and differences we see from each other, these are being selected and may produce new species after thousands of generations. Yes, of course, you have to wait. Okay, that's all. I hope you understood some of it. This is Mohak Gupta signing off.